Two people met the same man after the same resurrection. He had been dead. Both of them saw him alive, and what he said to the one was not what he said to the other. To the first, a woman standing in a garden before sunrise, he said,
"Stop clinging to me."
To the second, a man standing in a locked room 8 days later, he said,
"Put your finger here."
One was told to loosen her hands. The other was told to put his hand where the nail marks were. If you have ever wondered whether God treats everyone the same way, this is the week that answers it, because those two sentences were not spoken in the same moment. They were not spoken on the same day. They were not even spoken in the same week. There were 8 days between them. Start with the woman. It is still dark. The account says she came to the tomb while it was still dark, which tells you something about the night she had just spent. Nobody walks to a grave before sunrise because they slept well. She had watched him die. She had watched where they put the body, and she came back with one job in mind: to finish caring for a corpse. That is the entire plan she woke up with. Think about the 3 days behind her. The burial had been rushed because the Sabbath was coming. There had not been time to do it properly. So she had spent an entire day sitting still, unable to work, with the last kind thing she could do for him waiting on the other side of it. That is a very particular kind of waiting. Anyone who has lost someone and had to sit through a night before the arrangements could be made knows exactly what that day is. The stone is moved, the body is gone, and her first thought is not resurrection. Her first thought is that somebody took him. She says it out loud, twice.
"They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they laid him."
Read that again slowly. I do not know where they laid him. The grief has a very specific shape. It is not, he is gone. It is, I do not know where he is. Hold on to that sentence. We are going to come back to it at the end, and it is going to mean something different than it means right now. Then a man is standing there, and she does not know him. She thinks he is the gardener. She asks him where the body was put, because she is still working the only plan she has. And he says one word, her name.
Mary.
That is when she knows. And the very next thing that happens is the thing almost nobody stops on. In many Bibles, that verse reads, "Do not touch me." And for centuries, people have read it as a rebuke, as distance, as a man stepping back from a woman who reached for him. But that is not what the text says. The study note on the New World Translation makes the point carefully. The word can mean to touch, but it can also mean to cling to hold on to. And the translation gives the scene in plain words.
"Stop clinging to me."
Stop, which means she had already started. He was not preventing a touch. He was ending one. She was holding him, and he was asking her to let the holding end. That is a completely different scene than the one most people picture. There is no recoil in it. There is no rejection in it. There is a woman with her hands full of the person she thought she had lost, and a voice saying, "Not like this." So the question is not why he refused her. He did not refuse her. The question is what he was taking out of her hands. Here is what she was holding. She was holding the version she used to have, the teacher on the road, the one you could walk beside and eat with and follow into a town. She had lost that, and for 3 days she had lived in the worst place a grieving person can live. The place where the person is gone and even the body is gone. And then she gets him back. Of course she grabs. Anyone would grab. But what she was reaching for was the past. She wanted it returned exactly as it was. And the thing standing in front of her was not a return. It was something that had never existed before. He tells her why in the same breath.
I have not yet ascended to the Father.
He is not staying. This is not the old arrangement restored. This is a few weeks of goodbye before something else begins. So stop clinging is not let go of me. It is closer to do not build your hope on holding me here. He does not take the comfort away from her. He gives her a job instead.
Go to my brothers and tell them.
She came to care for a body. She leaves as the first person to carry the news. That is what he did with a woman whose wound was that she could not let go. 8 days later, in a room with the doors locked, he would meet a man whose wound ran the other way. Thomas was not there. That is the whole beginning of his story, and it is easy to read past. On the evening of that first day, the others were together in a room. The doors were shut. Jesus came and stood among them and showed them his hands and his side. Thomas was somewhere else. Nobody tells us where. Nobody tells us why. The account does not explain it, and it does not blame him for it. He simply was not in the room on the night it happened. And here is a detail the account drops almost in passing. The doors of that room were locked. John tells us why. They were afraid. So picture the only arrangement John gives us. The others are together behind locked doors, afraid. Thomas is not with them. That is all John says. He does not tell us where Thomas was. He does not tell us why he was missing. He does not turn the absence into courage, and he does not turn it into cowardice. He leaves it as absence, which should make you go back and check who this man was before that week, because most people never do. Months earlier, when Jesus announced he was going back to Judea, the region where they had just tried to stone him, the disciples argued against it. They said they were just now trying to kill you, and you are going back there? One man in that group ended the argument. He said,
"Let us also go, so that we may die with him."
That was Thomas. The man history nicknamed the Doubter is the same man who once volunteered to die. Nobody puts those two verses next to each other. They are in the same book, by the same writer, about the same person. So he gets it secondhand. The others telling him the same story at once. We have seen the Master. And now, sit with what that week must have been like. Every person he trusted has now seen the thing he did not see. They are not lying to him. He knows them. But they are all standing on the other side of an experience he was not given. That is a specific kind of loneliness. It is not doubting a stranger. It is being the only one in the room who is still in the dark. And that is what a week of that does to a person. So he says the sentence that got his name attached to doubt for 2,000 years.
"Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and stick my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will certainly not believe."
Notice that this is not a question. He is not asking for reassurance. He is not saying, "Help me understand." He sets a condition, and he sets it in physical detail: the hands, the nails, the side. People usually read this as stubbornness. It might be simpler than that. He is describing exactly what would have to be true for him to stop being the only one in the dark. He is naming the specific evidence that would let him back into the room with everyone else. And nobody in that house could give it to him. For 8 days, nobody could. Then someone did, and he answered the condition word for word. 8 days later. The account gives us the number on purpose. Not the next morning, not that evening. 8 days. They are inside again. The doors are shut again. And Jesus comes and stands among them again and says the same greeting he said the first time.
Peace be with you.
He does not say it differently because Thomas is in the room. He does not enter with a correction. He walks into a house that has been arguing for a week about whether he is alive, and the first thing out of his mouth is the ordinary blessing you say when you come through a door. And then he turns to Thomas and says this,
Put your finger here and see my hands, and take your hand and stick it into my side.
Read those words next to what Thomas said 8 days earlier. The finger, the hands, the side. It is the same list in the same order. Thomas said it in a house, to friends, on a day when Jesus was not in the room. And 8 days later, Jesus repeats his sentence back to him, which raises a question the text never answers directly. He had heard him. From where? And here is the detail that almost nobody notices, and it is what keeps this account from being only about doubt. John records the invitation. John does not record the touching. Go and look. The verse gives us Jesus saying, "Put your finger here." The next verse gives us Thomas answering. In between, where you would expect the moment everyone pictures the hand going to the mark, there is nothing. Painters have filled that gap for centuries. The text leaves it empty. We are not told he did it. We are also not told he refused. We are only told what he said next. And what he said next was not, "Now I am satisfied." It was a confession. It is possible, and the silence allows it, that a man who swore he would need to put his hand inside a wound found that he did not need to the moment he was actually looking at the face. The proof he demanded was offered to him in full. What the account records is that the offer was enough. And then John does something at the end of the chapter that explains why he wrote any of it down. He says Jesus performed many other signs that are not written in this scroll. Many. He is telling you outright that he left things out. And then he gives the reason he kept the ones he kept, so that you may believe. That helps explain why the account can leave the touching unrecorded. John was not writing to satisfy anyone's curiosity about what a resurrected body feels like. He was writing to put you in the room. Now put the two of them side by side, because this is the part that changes how you read the whole week. Mary was holding on to something that was already over, and he told her to loosen her grip. Thomas was refusing to hold on to anything he could not verify, and he told him to put his hand where the nail marks were. If you only read one of those, it looks like a rule. Read them together, and it is obviously not a rule. It is the refusal of a rule. He did not have a policy about touching. He had two people in front of him with two different injuries, and he treated the injuries. She did not need evidence. She already believed she was clutching him. What she needed was permission to stop trying to rebuild yesterday. He did not need permission to let go. He had let go completely. What he needed was one piece of ground solid enough to stand on again. One was given an ending. The other was given a floor. This is where I want to bring back the sentence from the beginning. In the garden, before she knew who he was, Mary said, "I do not know where they laid him." That is the oldest sentence grief has. It is not only about a body. It is the feeling that the person you buried is now somewhere you cannot reach and cannot picture, and that the not knowing is its own second loss. The account does not answer that sentence with an explanation. It answers it with a voice saying her name. And that is the pattern of the whole week. Nobody in this chapter is argued into anything. Mary is not corrected for grabbing. Thomas is not shamed for the condition he set. Neither of them is handed a lecture about how faith is supposed to look. Each of them is met at the exact place where they broke. And there is a line worth drawing here because people use this account to shame each other with it. Thomas did say he would not believe without seeing. But the account shows the difference between refusing to look and needing to be shown. He was asking for the same thing the others had already been given for free. He was asking to see. There is a difference between a man who says, "Show me," and a man who says, "I will not look." The first one is standing in the room 8 days later with his eyes open. The second one is not in the account at all. Which leaves one honest question, and it is not rhetorical. Which of the two are you? Are you still holding something that ended? A version of a person, a version of a life, a way things used to be, and your hands have not been able to open since? Or are you the one standing outside the room, listening to everybody else describe something you have never been shown, wondering what is wrong with you for needing more than their word for it? The text does not tell you which one is better. It records a man who did not use the same sentence twice. If this reached you today, type the word 8 in the comments and tell me where you are watching from. There is one more thing in this chapter that almost nobody notices, and it is on the screen now. This is the word keeper. Ancient wisdom for your life today.